podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome to the 1905 podcast. Each week, Joe and I bring you our unfiltered takes on the highs, the lows, and everything in between, following the Blues from Gate 13 of the Matthew Harding Stand. Let's hit the notes.
Good morning from what is a quite remarkable May bank holiday weekend. It has been nothing short of sensational, and 33, 34 degree heat has at the very least made Chelsea's disgusting season feel that little bit better. Now, on the Sunderland game, I'll be honest, I'm sure Chris is the same. I don't think we expected very much. I think the supporters made sure that they knew that beating Tottenham on Tuesday night was definitely a must, or at least certainly try and win the game, which they did. But other than that, Chelsea really have been a distraction. They've been a hindrance to my life this season. I have to say, I have not enjoyed watching them play. They have been woeful. And everybody, and I mean everybody at the football club, whether you're a player, whether you're an owner, whether you're a sporting director, whether you make the tea, whatever your job is at Chelsea Football Club, I think, quite frankly, as a group, we just need to look at ourselves massively and say that we have spent £1.8 billion on a squad of players that finished 10th in the Premier League. And more or less, a lot of sides, Brighton did the double over us, Sunderland did the double over us, Man United did, Arsenal did, and if my memory serves, I think Newcastle did as well. And there was just some shocking defeats against some horrendous teams. And if it wasn't for Tottenham doing God's work this season, I think that Chelsea really have been a laughingstock amongst the fan bases, amongst our own fan base. And sadly, we have fallen so far. It's really staggering. And I think I sit on the side of the fence that Chelsea should always try and achieve European football in any capacity, maybe with the exception of the Conference League, which I think, as bad as it sounds, it really is Mickey Mouse. But looking at the Europa League yesterday, we just needed a point against Sunderland to guarantee that. And even that we couldn't do. And you just felt as though the club and the players didn't fancy it. Their performance showed that they didn't really care. And there's been a real lack of care and quality in this football side for such a long time that I'm really struggling to get excited for them, to get excited to watch them, to talk about them. And it's been a really, really hard few months just trying to fathom what on earth this club and football club wants to be anymore. I think Chris and I are particularly excited for the new manager to come in. I think a lot of people are, and I think it will take someone of his magnitude, I think, to put us on the right path, because there's so many players at this football club that I think, when I say run the dressing room or run the club, I just feel as though if they don't show up and don't care, nobody will call them out. And I'm not picking on players. I'm not going to say individual names because I don't really know this. This is a feeling I have within the club that if a certain big player doesn't play well or doesn't try hard or certainly looks like he's giving the game up, I don't think there's another player in that side that will look him in the eye and say, mate, you are a disgrace. And that didn't happen under previous regimes. It didn't happen under previous teams. And this is where Chelsea's lack of identity and lack of character, lack of leadership really stems from. And in that game in isolation yesterday, I mean, I really, if I was playing, I would have really liked to have got a hold of a couple, even on the field, whilst the game was going on, and just rattled a few cages. And to be honest with you, I just feel as though modern football players are so concerned with their social media profiles, are so concerned with what people think of them, that this type of football player has gone out of the game. And it's really sad. It's really, really sad. No one's prepared to kind of fall out with each other. And you're allowed to fall out with someone for 10 minutes and then afterwards say, sorry, mate, didn't mean that, or I meant it, but equally, in that moment, I thought you were taking the piss. Let's forgive and forget and let's move on. But at the same time, if our standards are going to remain high and stay high, everybody needs to be pulling in the same direction. And particularly the players that are deemed to be important characters, expensive signings, players that you would have assumed to have taken up these roles. If you're not prepared to do it, how can you get anybody else in that squad to do it? Did we go through the game? I mean, it's an end of season game that we didn't seem to care. We didn't seem to want to be there. We didn't really put or lay a glove on Sunderland for most of the game. There was a little flurry towards the end where Palmer scored, a bit of a pot shot goes in the corner, but the chances that Chelsea gave up, they could have easily been 3 or 4-0 down before Chelsea scored their first goal. And I don't think Sunderland are a particularly good team. I just think they work hard for each other. And I think this is what Chelsea doesn't seem to fathom, is that you can have a fairly ordinary bunch of players, but if you're prepared to give 100% every single week, you will pick up victories against the likes of Chelsea, because they might have better players on paper, but if they've got no backbone and they've got no desire to want to be out there, then hard work beats talent every single day of the week, in my opinion. It just does. We found ourselves a goal down from Hume in the first half with a good volley, to be fair. The goal, in essence, that goes in, I'm not too unhappy about. It's a decent strike. It's in the corner. I don't think Sanchez can do much about it. But it's all the play up until the goal. The 4 or 5 chances that we've given up before that, and the way that Sunderland just wanted it more. Chelsea were just so slow, tippy-tappy football, going nowhere, created nothing. It was a hot day, but equally, Sunderland are running around like lunatics, and we were just sort of jogging, and there was no effort. There's no effort at all. No, Chelsea's, the fans that went up there yesterday spent all that money getting there and back in food and tickets and whatnot, and to be given that level of performance yet again is just a disgrace from the players. And obviously Sunderland was just far the better team in the first half. They outplayed us in every facet of the game. We didn't lay a glove on Sunderland whatsoever. There was no passion, no desire. And in the second half, Brian Brobbery, what his name is, goes through, and he should have made it 2-0. There was multiple chances, other chances that I won't go into because they weren't as clear cut, but again, chances created by Sunderland. And then obviously there's the goal from Malo Gusto, who taps in at the back post, lovely, to make it 2-0 to Sunderland. I mean, that guy, his face is annoying me. His face is annoying me. His play is annoying me. His attitude's annoying me. I think he's one of our worst players, Gusto. He is fucking terrible, like really bad. And I'm struggling with him a lot because I don't want to see him at my football club ever again. And I've got a funny feeling he's going to be one that hangs around. And I'm going to be really annoyed next year if he comes back and plays quite well, because I'll just be like, well, you didn't give a shit this season. You didn't care. And I don't like players like that. I don't like players that turn up or turn it on when they're doing well. And when the chips are down, that's when you find out about a person and a player in life. That's a life lesson, not a football lesson. When the chips are down and your mate calls you up and says, mate, you're doing all right, how's things, or whatever. That's when you can rely on people. Gusto wouldn't be one of them. Gusto, he waits at the party until you're having a good time, and then he comes and speaks to you. He's one of those people. And I just feel as though that he is a sad. He's a diarrhea mark, a diarrhea stain in this football club. I can't stand the guy. And there's plenty of them. Fofana, you can put him in that boat as well. I mean, that stupidity once again for another red card for Chelsea. To be fair, I've seen some shocking decisions of late in the Premier League. And none of them, the Kai Havertz one against Burnley the other night, a shocking tackle high up around the Achilles that goes unpunished. But yet, someone can get red carded for a second yellow for a slight tug on a player. Just feels the two things aren't the same. To be honest with you, the one that Havertz does, and he's not the only one, but the one that Havertz did on the Burnley player, I think it was on our old player, funny enough. His name escapes me now. Ugochukwu, maybe? That's a career ender. If he gets him in the right place there, he could end that guy's career. But just a yellow card, that'll do. Carry on, don't worry about it. But Fofana is brain dead. We know this. He's absolutely clueless. He's a dim-witted, idiotic centre-half that I can't wait to see leave our football club. And to be honest with you, I could go through some other players, but I don't really want to. There's no point. You know my feelings on a lot of them. Like I say, Chris and I will do our end-of-season review and players in and players out in due course, and we need to have a good sit down together, I think, and really go through what we think is players that are just throwing the towel in and players that aren't maybe up to it just yet, that might have a bit more potential. But yes, I digress. I mentioned it earlier on. Palmer obviously slots in a goal from just outside the box. I think when he's left peg, swings it in the bottom corner, and maybe the goalkeeper should. He gets a hand on it. Maybe he could have saved it, but it gave Chelsea a bit of a lifeline. And we had a bit of a flurry towards the end, and maybe could have salvaged a point, maybe, but they didn't quite do it. And yeah, the game was over, and that was that. And Chelsea looked down the barrel at 10th position. And the reason I say about European football, and everyone's got their own opinion, right? And I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying that people that think that we should be out of Europe are wrong. I'm not saying this, but in my opinion, Chelsea have got 38 league games next season. If they were to go out in the first round of the Cups next year as well, they play 40 matches and they're done. For a squad of Chelsea's size, it's horrendous and a little bit financially crippling, if I'm being honest with you. Now, I know what Chris might say, and I know what other people might say. They'll go, well, we'll sell all these players and we'll be fine. The trouble is you've still got to sell them. You've still got to find buyers for all these people. And I just don't see that. Everyone knows that Chelsea are going to need to sell players, and they're going to want to come in on the cheap and do us a dirty deal, and we'll probably take it because we're fucking stupid. But I just feel as though, yeah, it's a good time to reset. I get all that. I get the argument for resetting the squad and it being so catastrophically bad that it really looks bad on the sporting directors, and they don't get a chance to sort of go, oh, we won the FA Cup and we finished 7th and made the Europa League. It wasn't a terrible year. I understand the reasons against Chelsea doing that, but I just feel as though as a club we have lost that winning mentality. Even as a fan base, I feel like everyone's happy to finish 10th. Everyone's happy to finish, outside the European places and all the rest of it. And I just feel as though winning the Europa League is not a bad thing. And I know it's not as big as the Champions League. I'm very, very aware of that. Please, no, I'm not dumb, but at the same time, to not being any European football at all, I just feel as though it's a really, really embarrassing time for this football club and the people that are involved in it, because the game had that feel of we don't really want to be in Europe about it, because we're sort of harbouring onto this dream that in 2015, Conte came with a Chelsea squad that didn't have European football and they won the league. And I just don't feel like lightning's going to strike twice in the same place. It's a big ask. Man United didn't have European football this year, and they had a fairly decent season, but I think they finished third. I haven't even looked at the table, but they weren't good. I mean, their first half of the season was tragic, really tragic. And when Carrick came in, is only when the season really picked up. And I just feel as though Chelsea might be a little bit deluded if they think they're going to go and wipe the floor of Man City and Arsenal next season, just because they're not in the European places. I think that competition, that edge that you gain from being in Europe, I think is very, very important. And I think there's games where Chelsea played in the Conference League where they were using a fairly second-string side, but they'd go and win 5-0 or 6-0, 7-0 or something. And yeah, I know that's not what we want to see necessarily. You want more competitive games than that. But what it did do, it gave players that were a little bit out of form a chance to go and score a goal or create a goal or keep a clean sheet. And you felt as though the performances were quite consistent that season to a degree. And there wasn't this big drought of games where, like this year, where we didn't score a goal for 6 matches. If we'd had a Conference League game to go and play and we go and beat someone 4-0 or 4-1 or something, you kind of get that edge on a Saturday or a Sunday again that comes back to you naturally. So I feel as though we might be missing a little bit of that. And only watching Chelsea play potentially 40 league games next year just feels really, really shit, doesn't it? And yeah, there might be a cup run in there, possibly, maybe, but I just feel as though we've really let ourselves down this year, and I'm struggling to really shake that off. And yeah, there's not a lot I can really say about it, to be honest. I'll leave it there and let Chris come in and discuss what he thinks about the European places. I think he's got a very different view on it to me, and that's completely fine. But like I say, as a fan base, I think we need to be very, very careful. We don't constantly wish for this sort of thing, because every competition you enter is a chance for silverware, and the little you're in them, the less chance you got of winning anything. So if you were to say to Chelsea next season, you're going to finish third and win the Europa League, I think I'll be pretty happy with that. If that's all we could achieve, opposed to just finishing third or just finishing fourth, which is not what I want to do at all. I want Chelsea to win the goddamn league and actually put in a real competitive title challenge, because we haven't had one for such a long time. I am now off to the beach to see Chris and his family, and he will be back on here to give his opinions on everything Chelsea after this break.
Hey everybody, this is Taylor from the Total Soccer Show, and this episode is brought to you by Hotels.com. The summer of soccer is right around the corner, and if you aren't using Hotels.com to book the experience of a lifetime, it's worth asking, why? As a member, you save up to 20% on hundreds of thousands of hotels around the world and earn rewards on every single stay, which means the trips you're taking now help pay for the ones you're already dreaming about. So, whether you're following your team across North America this summer or planning a well-earned escape after being glued to football for weeks on end, make sure you book on Hotels.com and start earning rewards. Because when it comes to hotels, it's all in the name, Hotels.com.
This is quite a weird situation, really. I'm recording a voice note, as Joe said, I'm waiting for him at the beach. There you go. I mean, it was a disgrace, wasn't it, to echo Joe's point. But the fact that Chelsea needed a point at Sunderland on the last day to get Europa League and sort of salvage the season, and not only didn't achieve it, but didn't really look close to achieving it, did we? And it wasn't one of those where you're like, even with 10 men, with 10 or 15 minutes to go, we're throwing the kitchen sink and doing everything but score to get that equaliser. It was just so flat. And as Joe said, it just didn't look like the players of the club cared, which frankly is pathetic and kind of sums up what we've seen across the season, really. I mean, my point on Europe, I think as Joe said, it was really a little bit more or less about not being in Europe, because I think the club needs a reset. And perhaps it forces some kind of reset. That said, I had no interest in being in the Conference League, but being in the Europa League would have been fine. And financially, I think it's potentially worth up to about 40 million for the club. So certainly the club will have been very disappointed not to be in Europe at all. It's a disaster from a balance sheet point of view. And yeah, as Joe said, it does really potentially create a real shortage of games next season, in terms of what Chelsea have got to go into in the competitions, which for Xabi Alonso, there's positives and negatives, aren't there? I think there's positives with the time on the training pitch without a doubt, but the negatives will be, making sure you keep a decent sized squad. And let's face it, Chelsea will still have a squad of two in every position, etc. So how do you keep those players happy with so few games is a different challenge for him. But we will obviously come on to talk about all of that kind of nearer the time. I think we have to reflect on just how poor the season has finished. Chelsea have ended up, looking at the league table, the same number of points distance from West Ham, relegated in 18th, to Aston Villa in 4th. And just let that sink in for a second. We were as close to relegation as we were where we finished last season. It's been a shocker, an absolute shocker. And we obviously went into the season hoping we would build on last year, not necessarily win the league, not even necessarily challenge right to the end, but certainly get closer. I think that was the remit that we put out. Win a trophy again, get closer, get yourself into third and be there or thereabouts. Probably kind of what Man United have done, because they didn't actually have a challenge, but they haven't finished a million miles away from Arsenal in the end. And if you're looking at them, you're kind of thinking, well, if they have a good summer in the transfer market, it's open to them next year to go and have a challenge. And Chelsea look just miles off. And it's a disaster for the club. And I was thinking about the reasons, frankly, to not get in Europe. You go right back to the decision when Maresca left the club. And the Maresca thing itself, I'm not going to go into, because there was certainly two sides to that. It wasn't purely on the club. And then the fact that he's very likely to end up at Man City perhaps does paint a picture of what was going on behind the scenes there. But Chelsea failed twice to bring in a manager of a good enough quality to make sure that Chelsea's season wasn't derailed. Obviously, Liam Rosenior was, it's a terrible appointment. I mean, we kind of say in hindsight, I think we said it at the time, that it was very, very risky, and the risk did not pay off. And then even, bringing in Callum McLaren, I don't have a go at Callum, it's not his fault, but someone who doesn't even have an elite coaching license, someone who has come in and done his best to sort of salvage the season, but ultimately hasn't done much with the good players. And you think about just how little more Chelsea needed, as an extra point against Sunderland would have got Chelsea into the Europa League. You know, an extra couple of wins could have got you in the Champions League. You know, it's that silly. And in not appointing someone at that point even to maybe really get us over the line and salvage the season and just bring in effectively the easy option, which was the youth team coach. Just again, it stinks of mediocrity, and it stinks of kind of what Joe alluded to there about the club accepting non-elite status. And I was thinking with the Callum, just no other club would do it, would they? I just can't think of a time when I've ever seen an Arsenal, a Man City, Liverpool, Man United, whoever, any club of that level, going in and bringing in a caretaker that no one's ever heard of. It would always be, you know, an ex-player, like a Michael Carrick. It would have been a John Terry, perhaps, a Jody Morris, maybe even someone who's got a bit of management experience, but also has played for the club. But yeah, you kind of you reap what you sow. And I think Chelsea have kind of got what they deserved, really, for just a number of terrible decisions. And there we are, 10th in the table, the 4th season in a row now under the owners that we've badly underperformed. And only hope can be that big lessons are learned. And in bringing Xabi Alonso as manager, as we talked about before, there is going to be big change ahead, because there has to be now massive change at the football club. As Joe and I keep teasing, we are going to do obviously a squad review and kind of do what we think should be the ins and outs for next season. As we have said with no Europe, you definitely can trim the squad down. And Joe's right, I don't think you'll get big money for quite a few players, but I think you just have to accept that, you know, I won't do the whole list now, but the likes of Badiashile, the likes of Disasi, and to be honest, the likes of Fofana and Gusto, in my mind, should have played their last games for the club. And a big reset is needed. And frankly, I'm completely going to agree with Joe. And it's been talked about in the press that Xabi Alonso wants mentality monsters, he wants personalities. And I couldn't agree more that the biggest problem this squad has is that. Joey talked about it there, but I look at the likes of Gusto and Fofana and just think, and you see the likes of some of their antics off the pitch as well, but you look at them on the pitch and go, yeah, they are not the types of characters that this football club needs. And we need to do a big reset and shift out anyone like that clearly isn't mentally strong enough. And by the way, it was a harsh red card, but it was still silly. He still gave the referee the opportunity to do that, knowing that you're on a yellow card. And that is our 11th red card of the season. And if nothing else, if you just took away the ill discipline and halved that number of red cards in the league, Chelsea would probably have ended up in Europe. It's been an absolute shambles, isn't it, from start to finish. Where do we go from here? I think what Joe and I will do, obviously, we'll do a bit of a review of the season as well in an upcoming episode. We did last year, we called it Awards of the Season. I just don't think we can call it that this year. I don't know if you guys will listen if you call it that. So I think we'll call it a review of the season and try and pick out where the positives were and obviously where the negatives were as well. And then we will do that squad review. The big fear clearly from the result yesterday, and it just might have happened anyway with not getting Champions League, is that the Chelsea will have to sell one or two of the kind of the crown jewel assets as well now. And the most strongly rumoured, of course, in the last few days has been Enzo Fernandez. Those rumours have come up again that Real Madrid are sniffing around him, and now Man City with Enzo Maresca sniffing around him too. Whether it happens this summer or not, the rumours are not going anywhere, and it just feels a little bit like it's a matter of time. And I think probably a lot might depend on what kind of World Cup he has and what kind of price Chelsea want for him, and whether there are clubs out there willing to pay it. But I think if those things marry up, then I think unfortunately Enzo Fernandez may have played his last game for the club, which I said after the Tottenham game would be something I wouldn't want to happen, and I stand by that. But my fear is that it might. And the other one I fear might be in a similar camp is Marc Cucurella. He's another one being strongly linked to all of the big sides in Spain, pretty much. And again, you look at him and wonder if Chelsea might think at 28, the last time to try and get a decent fee for him. And again, if someone's willing to pay the money that Chelsea want for him, I fear that he might be one that, because of not being in Europe, Chelsea feel like they have to, unfortunately, part ways with. But again, we will see over the coming weeks and months. You tend to find in a World Cup year, don't you, that the business is done quickly at the start of the summer, and then there's a little bit of a pause, and then you kind of see what happens after the World Cup. So we'll have to wait and see there. But there is a lot to do in this squad, and I hope and pray that the sporting directors are already being very, very busy to make sure that there's lots of movement done and we're clearing out as much of this squad as possible for Xabi Alonso before he comes into training on that first day in July. There really weren't many positives I can pick out of the game yesterday at all, to be honest. There haven't been for the last couple of months, let's face it. And yeah, what must Xabi Alonso be thinking? I mean, do you know what? I'll finish on the positives. I try and do that. The only way is up, surely, for him. He'll be looking at thinking that all he's got to do is come in and get us back into some sort of European qualification and it's improvement. So we've set a hell of a low bar for him to improve on. And yeah, I've been doing loads of stuff, reading up and looking into the way he's obviously managed his time at Real Madrid and obviously Leverkusen particularly. And there's so many positives about him. He really could be the man to Chelsea to turn this club around, and God hope that he does it. And maybe the interesting one yesterday, and I think Joe has a feeling we might go for him, was the captain of Sunderland yesterday, was Granit Xhaka, 33 years old. Everything that you look for in terms of personality, a bit of an old school throwback, exactly the kind of player that Chelsea just don't have really in this squad right now. And you look at him and think, maybe not him, but certainly personalities like that will be the kind of characters that Xabi Alonso has to bring into the club, because, yeah, a season like this, whilst it was terrible, wasn't also that big a surprise, because even over the last couple of years, we've seen that Chelsea have got these ups and downs in them. And God help us, let's hope for improvement. And we didn't even have Spurs getting down on the last day to make us feel a little bit better about our own club. So there you go. But anyway, we'll be back. As I say, we'll be back next time to do a bit of a review of the season. Then we'll do that squad audit. And then we'll go into the summer and hope there's lots and lots to talk about. We'll see you next time. Those were the Chelsea notes for this week. If you enjoyed the podcast, do us a favour and share it with a fellow Blue. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a review wherever you're listening. Wherever you may be, stay carefree, and remember, every little thing's gonna be alright.